Welcome back to the next episode. We've just been to the Abrolhos Islands in the last episode, and now we're moving on. And this time I intend to cover from the Abrolhos Islands to Broome. Abrolhos Islands are about 30 miles offshore, about 30 to 40 miles off Geraldton. And after a week or so there, we decided to move over to Port Gregory. I'd never been there before. It's been an famous place over the years. It's a massive recreational fishing spot, a lovely thin anchorage inside a reef. Now, I'd never been there, so we went in there. It was only a narrow anchorage, lovely until if there's any big swell, at high tide the swell comes over the reef and tends to rock the boat terrifically, and it's subject to a lot of current as the tide runs either way through a gap in the reef on the south end. But anyway, we stayed there 2 days and decided to move to Kalbarri. Now, because I've got a friend in Kalbarri called Mitch Burgess. I used to work with him, and so we moved to Kalbarri. Now, Kalbarri is on the Murchison River, and it's an unusual river mouth where the actual river runs at right angles. The river mouth runs at right angles to the beach, and it's protected by a reef on the outside, as you'll see from the photographs. Now, to the uninitiated there as well, it's like a washing machine because the waves hit the reef in a big swell and continue on across the river mouth. So depending on what you're thinking at the time, or whether you've got experience, it could be a frightening experience. Anyway, I rang Mitch, and Mitch organised John Chalk, a local fisherman, and he explained to me how to get in, which I just took on board. I took local knowledge and went straight in. It was quite a big swell and very sloppy, and quite frankly my wife was terrified. Inside the river, dead flat in this lovely coastal town called Kalbarri. Absolutely beautiful it is, a beautiful town. A lovely anchorage. We anchored about 100 miles away from the wharf. And some interesting points about Kalbarri. While I was there getting fuel, I got 500 litres of fuel in Kalbarri. A bloke came along the wharf and said, "Is that the Adriatic out there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I used to own that 30 years ago." And his name was Greg, or Bangles, McDonald. Now, to me, meeting a previous owner was an absolute highlight, and he was fascinated. He came on board and seen all the changes that had been made from when it was a fishing boat, and he used to fish the North Island of the Abrolhos, crayfishing there. It was a great time for me just meeting him. And after about 10 days of just loving Kalbarri, and Mitch came over with his children, and it was just lovely to meet them, I decided to move to Shark Bay, which meant, of course, firstly, leaving the river mouth, which my wife was very apprehensive, I can tell you. So I left Kalbarri for Shark Bay, which was only about 15 hours away, I believe. I can't remember, something like that. With the southwest 25 knots behind me. But the problem is in Kalbarri, or heading that way, is the Zundorf Cliffs. The swell bounces off the Zundorf Cliffs and turns that track up to Shark Bay into a washing machine, and it was rough. We were surfing down one wave and punching into the next, coming off the cliffs. Eventually we got to Shark Bay and it was dead flat. Shark Bay is an absolute wilderness. A wilderness for boat. There's just a massive area where there's virtually no one, hardly see a boat, and anchorages everywhere. So we went into Shark Bay, went into the town of Denham, Monkey Mire, fished, went into a lot of bays and fished. It was absolutely beautiful. It's a wilderness. And we had a fantastic time in Shark Bay, you'll see from the photographs. A couple of days in Monkey Mire, went out for dinner there. And relentlessly moved north towards Carnarvon. Now, Carnarvon's just a little port. We tied up to the wharf there, spent a couple of days, got food, and we'd been there before, so we decided to move to Coral Bay, quite a famous tourist spot, and it's the start of the Ningaloo Reef. Ningaloo Reef goes for about 500 miles up to North Cape, right along the coast. Coming around Quobba Point, just north of Carnarvon, was quite rough, good forecast, quite rolly, and for the first time in my life, my wife got seasick. She worked on all sorts of boats with me before, but she got seasick, and she came out of the bedroom and told me, gave me a bit of a speech about my pedigree, and she went back to bed. I turned the boat round when she's in bed, went back to Carnarvon. When she woke up in the morning, we were tied to the wharf, and she said, "What are we doing back in Carnarvon?" I said, "You're getting off and you're getting on a plane." She looked at me, and I booked a plane ticket for her home. So it's probably the best thing for both of us, really. And I headed back up to Coral Bay and anchored up there. It was blowing so hard at Maud's Landing, it was blowing 30 or 40 knots of southwest. It was screaming. And I'm thinking, I'm glad she's not here, because it was just whitewater. Now I left Maud's Landing, which is right next to Coral Bay. I went to Norwegian Bay, went inside the reef. It was blowing 30 or 40 knots, dead flat, but just cold and windy and white water everywhere. Then I left Norwegian Bay and went to Tanabiddy. Tanabiddy's another gap in the reef near North Cape. When I was there, there was 13 dive boats there picking up tourists, and every day those dive boats were full of people diving with whale sharks or just diving on the reef. And I picked up a public mooring there, and it blew every day. After 2 days I moved away, went round Northwest Cape to Soraya Island, then down to Onslow, and then out to the Montebello Islands. The Montebello Islands is famous for the atomic bomb tests in the 50s. I believe the British conducted 4 atomic bomb tests on the Montebello Islands, but it's in the most beautiful places, anchorages, completely safe anchorages everywhere. It's not that well charted, but you can see the bottom. So I spent 2 weeks there fishing, which is heaven, you know, fantastic. As I relentlessly moved on, I went to Dampier, to the Dampier Archipelago, where I used to work for 10 years. Fished all the way along there. The fishing was absolutely unbelievable fishing. Coral trout, red emperor, red-throated emperor. Well, the list just goes on. You could just fish all day. There's only one person, so how many fish do you need? Stopped at Westmore Island. I went to Port Hedland, where I had friends. Now Port Hedland is very inhospitable for yachties. They don't want you in the harbour because it's Port Hedland's, I think, it's got the second, if not the highest, freight and weight in the world coming out of there. And it's all big iron ore ships, massive tugs, just not interested in yachties. You can't even take your dinghy into the harbour without security clearance. Although meeting my friends was fantastic for me, I had a really good time and fantastic hospitality from them. Ian Gear and his wife, Trude. The place itself was very inhospitable. And they had a fantastic yacht club with no yachts. The yacht club was the centrepiece of the town. And 600 meals in the weekend. Just a fantastic, really a fantastic place, except they didn't want yachties. So I moved from Port Hedland because I had a friend in Broome. And so I went to Broome and anchored there for 2 weeks, done a bit of work to the boat, new batteries, refurbished my starter motor. Basically had a good time with my friend, Seth Wright, and his wife. And my wife came up, we had a really good time in Broome, except the anchorage at Gauthian Bay off 90 Mile Beach, just subject to roll and tide constantly. So that was my journey from the Abolus Islands to Broome. that's the end of that segment, and I'll go on to the next one. Thanks for watching. That's the end of the video. I've tried to do it really quickly because it didn't have a lot of time, but if you need to have a look or good look at it, just subscribe to Kolesnikov Productions and you'll be able to see it all. And it's just a rough guide and all my photographs of what I've taken and other people's photographs of where I've been. An interesting journey about how great Australia really is. So thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.